You know that feeling when you finally close the door behind you after a long day with people, and it's like you can breathe again. That moment when the noise stops, the smiling stops, the performing stops, and you just sit there in the quiet and something inside you relaxes, like you've been holding your breath all day and only now alone can you let it go. If you've ever felt that, you're not broken, you're not antisocial, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just someone who recharges differently, and there's a beautiful reason why. Let me paint you a picture. It's Saturday afternoon. Your friends have been texting all week about getting together. You said yes because you care about them, you do want to see them, but as the day gets closer, something shifts inside you. There's this quiet heaviness, not sadness exactly, just resistance. You go anyway, and it's fine, it's even fun. You laugh, you talk, you're present. But underneath it all, there's this tiny hum of exhaustion that nobody else can see. And when you finally get home, you don't want to talk to anyone. You don't want to watch something loud or stimulating. You just want silence. You want to be alone with yourself. And in that aloneness, you don't feel lonely. You feel alive again. So what's happening here? Why do some people feel genuinely happier, more energized, more like themselves when they're alone? Let's talk about it. First, let's get something straight. Enjoying being alone doesn't mean you hate people. It doesn't mean you're depressed or disconnected or incapable of love. It simply means your inner world is rich, alive, and demanding of attention. Think of it this way: imagine your mind is like a quiet room. When you're around people, it's like opening the windows and doors. The world rushes in, sounds, voices, emotions, expectations. All of it fills the room, and that can be wonderful. Connection is beautiful, but for some people, that room gets crowded fast. And when it gets too crowded, you can't hear yourself anymore. Being alone is like closing those windows again. It's not about shutting people out, it's about letting yourself back in. Now here's where it gets interesting. When you're with other people, even people you love, your brain is working constantly. It's reading faces, picking up tone, watching body language, figuring out when to speak and when to stay quiet. It's managing how you come across, how you're being received, whether you're saying the right thing. This isn't fake, it's not manipulation, it's just how human brains work in social spaces. We're wired to connect, and connection requires effort. But for some people, that effort is much bigger than for others. If you're someone who feels things deeply, if you notice small shifts in energy, if you pick up on what people aren't saying just as much as what they are, then being around others can feel like holding a lot of invisible weight. And after a while, you need to put it down. Let's talk about energy for a second. Some people gain energy from being around others. They come alive in conversation. They think out loud. They feel recharged by the buzz of people and activity. That's not better or worse, it's just how their system works. But other people lose energy in those same situations, not because they're weak or because something's wrong, but because their nervous system is wired to process things more deeply, more internally, more quietly. When you're alone, you're not being drained by input, you're not managing anyone else's emotions or expectations, you're just with yourself. And for people who live in their inner world a lot, that's where the real rest happens. It's like your soul gets to take off its shoes. Here's something else that matters: when you're alone, you get to be completely yourself without translation. Think about it: when you're with people, there's always a little bit of adjusting. You soften a thought here, you hold back a feeling there, you laugh at something that wasn't that funny, you ask how someone's doing even when you're tired. Again, this isn't fake, it's care, it's social harmony, it's part of being human. But it also means you're not fully, completely yourself. There's a version of you that only exists when no one's watching. And some people need regular access to that version, not because the social version is a lie, but because the alone version is where they feel most true. Let me tell you what happens in that space. When you're alone, your mind can wander. It can follow strange little thoughts that don't make sense to anyone else. It can replay a conversation not to judge it but to understand it. It can imagine, dream, process, feel. You can sit with emotions without having to explain them. You can be sad without comforting someone else's discomfort with your sadness. You can be happy without performing happiness. You can just be. And for people who spend a lot of time managing how they come across, that freedom is everything. There's also something deeply creative about solitude. When you're alone, your brain isn't splitting its attention. It's not tracking social cues or managing interactions. It's free to think in wider, stranger, deeper ways. Some of the most beautiful things humans create come from time spent alone. Not because loneliness is noble, but because quiet makes space for things that noise drowns out. If you've ever had a brilliant idea in the shower or solved a problem on a solo walk or felt a sudden clarity while sitting alone with your coffee, you know what I mean. Your brain needs space to do its best work. And for many people, that space only opens up in solitude. Now let's be honest about something. The world doesn't always understand this. We live in a culture that celebrates being social. Extroversion is seen as the default. If you'd rather stay home than go to a party, people ask if you're okay. If you enjoy your own company, people worry you're isolating. But here's the truth: being happy alone is not the same as being alone because you're unhappy. One is a choice, the other is a symptom. If you feel happier alone because being around people feels exhausting but also meaningful, that's healthy. If you enjoy solitude but can still connect when you want to, that's healthy. But if you're avoiding people because you feel unworthy of connection or because socializing brings up painful feelings you're running from, that's different. That's worth exploring with care. The difference is in how it feels. Does being alone fill you up, or is it just the absence of something painful? So if you're someone who genuinely loves being alone, here's what I want you to know. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't need to justify why you'd rather spend your Friday night reading or walking or doing nothing at all. You don't need to apologize for needing space. The people who truly care about you will understand, and the ones who don't, that's information too. Being alone isn't sad. It's not a phase you need to grow out of. It's not something to fix. It's just how you recharge, how you process, how you come back to yourself. And in a world that's constantly demanding your attention, your presence, your energy, choosing to give some of that back to yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Here's the thing: life is going to ask a lot from you. It's going to ask you to show up, to be present, to connect, to care. And you'll do all of that because you're capable and kind and human. But in between all of that, you're also allowed to close the door, to sit in the quiet, to let yourself be still and unbothered and completely, unapologetically alone. Not because you don't love people, but because you also love yourself enough to give yourself what you need. And maybe that's the secret. Maybe the people who are happiest alone aren't running away from connection, they're just running toward themselves. And that, when you think about it, is one of the most beautiful kinds of coming home.